I make my living out of doing stand-up comedy, but my actual passion, my hobby, is economics. Some of you will know this. It's not a secret. It's a matter of public record. I won the economics prize in the sixth form at Horowhenua College in Levin in 19... So I bring some wisdom and a little bit of experience and skill to what I'm going to share with you this afternoon. And I also want to point out that for somebody who makes their living walking into a room kind of like this, not always this nice, but what I do, several times a week is I walk into a room full of people that I have never met before and try to guess what makes them laugh. So given that that is how I spend a lot of my time, I really love spreadsheets because they make sense and stuff. You add them up and columns match. And if I'm having a particularly bad day, sometimes what I like to do is just think of a number and add 15% to it, and then multiply it by 3 and divide by 23, and I get the number I first thought of, and it makes me so happy. I highly recommend that. It's just therapy for you on a bad day. I have also suddenly got a little bit more money in my life. My daughter, who is 19, has just gone flashing. I know. And she turned 19 just before she went, so I thought I would do something really special for her 19th birthday. So I decided to work out how much she's cost. Just so she'd know how much I value her. Do you know what I mean? This is how much I spent on you, sweetheart. And I started to add up all the money that I've spent on her, school fees and clothes and telephones and dance and music lessons and all of those things. Where are the parents? Do we have, I'm sure we do, parents. It's actually impossible to work out how much it costs to raise a child, doesn't it? I tried to work out how much it costs to raise Holly, and I just couldn't come to a number. But I also realised this is probably the wrong place to talk about the Holly cost, so let's move on. There's a line. Did I cross it? I don't know. So she's gone flashing, which is fantastic, really, because she loved it and I love it. I mean, you can imagine what it's like the first time your kid goes flashing. I mean, they can do what they like when they like. Everybody is eating what they want when they want. There's late nights, obviously, drinking too much, possibly wild parties, irresponsibility. I'm loving it. It's this is a really exciting new phase of my life. And I think I've got a bit more energy because one of the things I've realised is the most exhausting thing about being a parent is that you have to pretend that you know everything. Do you know what I mean? Your kids, they ask you questions, and you have to, if you don't have an answer to their question, you cannot then convince them that they have to eat their broccoli. So you have to pretend you know everything. Mummy, why is the sky blue? Well, darling, light contains all the colours of the spectrum, and the short waves, the red waves, they just pass through the atmosphere, but the long blue waves, they're caught on the gases in the atmosphere and they reflect back at us and our eyes read them as blue. That's why the sky's blue. Eat your broccoli. Now I can lie. I don't have to lie about stuff. I can say I don't know. Why did New Zealand On Air spend $400,000 on making the GC? I don't know, darling. Nobody knows the answer to that. Have a chip. So it's liberating, really, isn't it? And there's other stuff I can now admit that I don't know. I don't quite understand what's been happening with finance companies in New Zealand over the last 50 years. 50 finance companies have gone bust in the last few years. Bridgecorp owes 14,500 investors $490 million. And I don't understand why that isn't a crime. I don't understand why a whole lot more people aren't in prison other than Rod Petrusevich. And I also don't quite understand why Rod Petrusevich isn't thrilled to be in prison for 6.5 years, given that he says he hasn't got any money left, and now he's getting free room and board. I don't understand why Mark Hotchin, who owns half of Hanover Finance, isn't in prison. I don't get that. I don't understand how much did they lose. I wrote it down because it's such a big number. $650 million worth of investor funds. Now this is an interesting thing because I like to find out about the people involved in this. Mark Hotchin there was a story once Hanover collapsed. There was a story about Mark Hotchin running away from his half-finished house in Paradise Drive to one of his other houses in Hawaii. Oh, poor love. And while he was there, he invited one of his good friends, Sally Ridge. Do we know who Sally Ridge is? We're going to know a lot more about her than we should quite soon. So Mark Hotchin invited Sally Ridge over to stay with him. Now Sally Ridge, I'm sure you know, used to be married to Matthew Ridge, who had an affair with Nikki Watson, who used to be married to Eric Watson, who owns the other half of Hanover Finance. It is a very small circle of, can I say, assholes. I think I may have a solution to that particular problem. If just one of those people in that circle could get something, you know, really quite catchy. Bird flu, I'm thinking. Doesn't have to be AIDS. Problem solved. That's all I'm saying. You can get rid of some people fairly easily. So, there is stuff that I do know, and I guess I'm here because I'm like you. If you are fascinated by economics but don't necessarily know as much as you wish that you did. But we do know stuff. All of us in this room know stuff. I have been running a household budget for 30 years. I've been running a small business for 20 years. This is not rocket surgery, ladies and gentlemen. We know how to make budgets balance. And we also know stuff like not all debt is bad. And we also know that austerity is not always good. We know that if we stop shopping, some of the businesses in our neighbourhood go bust. We also understand that the global financial crisis was kick-started by people lending money they didn't have to people who couldn't pay it back. I mean, that's not rocket surgery either. And we know that Greece is going broke because not paying your taxes is a sort of national sport in that country. But what we don't know at this point of today is how we fix it. And that's something that as Kiwis we really do want to know. We're a nation built, I've always said, on working bees. We don't want to sit back and be told what to do. We want to be involved in getting stuff done. We want to ring Marge on the phone tree, get everybody together, get some hammers and some nails and some paintbrushes and get the job done. And so we want to understand how that's possible. I'm guessing there are very few people in this room who would want to blindly follow orders from Captain John Key. Am I right about that? I'm thinking that we're not all that thrilled that our waka seems to be veering slightly to the right at the moment. And that Captain Key can hear what he thinks is the sound of applause, but might actually be a waterfall, which will lead him down and crashing onto the rocks of pride. I love the way that he's not really our Prime Minister because he likes to sell himself as a person and a personable person. I don't know if you saw that one of the lead stories in the Sunday papers today was what a top bloke he is and he treats his family like royalty. And because he's had a rough week politically, so he's going to have a good week personally. And I was fascinated. They've been drawing comparisons. Apparently he has a bromance with David Cameron in the UK, and during the Diamond Jubilee they spent time together. And there was a little bromance story about how alike they are, except that David Cameron likes to relax by playing Angry Birds on his smartphone, and apparently John Key doesn't have time to play Angry Birds. Well, he wouldn't, would he? Because he's got real Angry Birds like Keke Parata and Judith Collins and Paul Bennett. Doesn't need virtual Angry Birds to play with. So there is stuff that we do understand and stuff that we don't understand. And one of the things that I try to understand is, I like to listen to economists. I was fascinated when the global credit crisis started a few years ago, and Alan Bollard, who is the governor of the Reserve Bank, I'm sure you all are aware of who he is. Can I say, as far as I know, did not win an economics prize in the sixth form. Don't know what he's basing any of this shit on. I've looked up the records, can't find it. But he suggested when the crisis started a few years ago that what we all needed to do for the sake of the New Zealand economy, this is true, was that we all should stop shopping. And I imagined when I read that what it would be like for him when he went home from work that day to his wife, and she would be there. There'd just be a note in the kitchen saying, "Your dinner's on the drive, you cock. Stop shopping. What would we do? What would we do with our lives?" Seriously, he said we needed to stop shopping and put things away for our retirement. Well, I've done that. I've got a couple of very comfy shoes and a knee rug, so I'm sorted. And KiwiSaver, obviously. But no, so and then 2 years later he flip-flopped. He said that what we needed to do was spend. We needed to stimulate the domestic economy by spending. Now, suddenly I found Alan Bollard incredibly attractive. But at the same time, Gareth Morgan, who I had quite a bit of time for, said no, actually, if we try to get ourselves out of the recession through private spending, we will experience a double dip. And what we needed to do was use government spending, public spending, to stimulate the local economy so that we didn't double dip. Which, you know, confusing because you've got people telling you different things. I'm going to finish today by giving you my best example of how I think the economy, I don't know if it does work, but how the economy should work. It's certainly how I run my economy in my little corner of the world. Yesterday I was in Nuffield Street in Newmarket, I'm sure some of us are familiar with it, and I saw a pair of shoes that I liked very much. They were lovely. They were pink and orange. Immediately I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking pink and orange, that's not a good combo. Actually in this shoe, gorgeous. and they were $360. And again, I know what you're thinking, bargain. And I probably need to make it clear when I say they were $360, that was actually for the pair. It's not per shoe. I don't know how they do it at that price. And I was thinking, I was going to buy them, and I thought, okay, hang on, is this the part of our little economic cycle where I should be not shopping, or should I be shopping to stimulate the domestic economy, or should I, as Gareth Morgan says, be waiting for the government to buy me these shoes? So I was a bit confused from it, a bit hot and sweaty, and I had to step out of the shop and just take a moment, a bit of a breather, and suddenly found myself in a different shoe shop, a much cheaper shoe shop. I won't bore you with what it was called, but it rhymes with #1 shoe warehouse. And I bought 2 pairs of shoes there for $30 each, one pair of pink, one pair of orange. I don't know why, it just felt right. So I spent $60. Are you with me? You can take notes. I spent $60. I didn't buy the pink and orange shoes for $360. So I saved $300. Oh, my maths isn't good. $300, didn't I? Just like that. Snap. Cash money in my wallet. $300. Beautiful. The beauty of that is I'm going back to Nuffield Street tomorrow morning, and I'm going to buy the pink and orange shoes for $360, but they'll only actually cost me $60 because I saved $300. How to run an economy, people. I don't think it's any worse than what anybody else has been doing recently. It is entirely possible, of course, that some of these lovely people will have more complex and valid economic solutions for you today. But please remember that no matter what happens by the end of this afternoon, I'm going shopping this week, so please do join me. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Cheers.